Hey everybody, welcome back to the final movie for the uh, Black History Month spoiler review. This is a nice little wrap up, and I thought it would be important to end it with one of the biggest movies uh, in black culture that we've all probably ever seen, and that's Marvel Studios' Black Panther. I even worn Black Panther, my Black Panther shirt for this because I had to represent my king, King T'Challa, aka the late great King Chadwick Boseman. Oh my God, it's like this dude. I mean, he played a hell of a lot of roles, but this one was monumental. I'm talking about because no joke, there's only two movies I've seen more than once in the theaters. I've seen Spider-Man No Way Home twice in the theaters, and I've seen Black Panther, Black Panther 3 times in the theaters. I loved it that much. As much as I love Avengers Endgame, I never went back to the theaters to see it twice in a row, or at least more than once. At least more than once in a theater. This one, I think it's like my 6th time watching this movie altogether, 3 being in the theater. And it's like, it reminds me how much I love this movie. But yeah, and you talking about black excellence. This is like chalk to the brim with black excellence. So of course you starring Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, the Black Panther, but we also got Michael B. Jordan as N'Jadaka / Eric Killmonger Stevens, Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia, Denai Guerrera as Okoye, Martin Freeman as Everett Ross, Daniel Kaluuya as Ukabi, Letitia Wright as Shuri, Winston Duke as M'Baku, Angela Bassett as Ramonda, Forrest Whitaker as Zuri. Of course, you got Andy Serkis as Ulysses Klaue. So you got of course, Florence Kusamba reprised his role as T'Chaka. So yeah, so it's like well, like that's the young T'Chaka. The older one, John Connie, as the older King T'Chaka. We also got Sterling K. Brown, who plays N'Jobu, father of Eric Killmonger. So it's like this is it is like a freaking good cast here. But yeah, this is like man, this is like a love letter to black excellence, honestly. But man, it went like the budget was $200 million, but it broke like records of like 1.348 billion. It's only been recently surpassed by Spider-Man No Way Home, as we all know why. But man, when this was released in February 16th in 2018 in the United States, it crushed it. I mean, everybody was out dressed in like African garb, like I only wish because I was, I don't know what. I didn't think about it until like the last effing minute, but it's like I really wanted to like find some place to, where to buy like, really, authentic African clothes. But obviously I couldn't, but it's like, man, I want to like really like just dress up in like, just like African pride. I mean, this is what like I wanted, like movies like of course Shang-Chi did, but it's like not maybe because of the pandemic, but it's like I wanted to be up on the same. I want Shang-Chi would have. I wanted it to be like on the same scale as Black Panther, and in movies like that really really wants to show like respect for the culture, like Encanto really like shows some real respect and in depth uh uh you know research into Colombian culture. There's nothing to do with like Colombian drug lords or BS like that or slums or anything like that. This is like respect. And it's like, it's more to them than, that fictitious, Hollywood, 80s and 90s type of propaganda or stereotype, and I know this is Disney, and it's like sometimes they take 2 steps forward, 1 step back half the time. But man, this is like, this is also in due because there was actually people from that culture, a bunch of people, not just one, but just a bunch of people in the writer's room of that culture that understands how to represent people like this. So this kind of picks off from the events of Civil War, where Teen T'Chaka died from the bombing thanks to Baron Zemo. So temporarily, just until Zemo was apprehended, T'Challa had to assume the mantle of and responsibility of Black Panther until he was brought to justice. Now, since that was dealt with, now they had to go back to Wakanda to properly take on the throne, and that isn't due to ritual combat, which in the comics in the past few years, that's been like a staple to the Black Panther mythos or lore, is that once a year, anybody from the other tribes of Wakanda who chooses a champion and tries to challenge, if they want to challenge the Black Panther to the throne, they have the right. We only do that once a year, and then of course, just to make it fair, they have the powers of Black Panther stripped away thanks to this potion. Of course, we all know like the hardship herb can give anybody the powers of the Black Panther. Maybe not everybody, but because like somebody of royal blood can actually, ingest that. Because the movie begins. I love the way it begins because they utilize this kind of smart sand technology. Because they utilize vibranium very well. It's so awesome. Sturdy King Brown regales us with the story of how Wakanda became Wakanda. This very large meteorite made of vibranium, because it's like an alien kind of like metal, I guess. It fell from space, landed in around the Central Africa, and the 5 tribes in that area of that time. It's like a very, very, very long time ago, way, way, way even before. I think it's kind of like akin to, in like the current comics going on with the Marvel right now, is that they're going off with like the Avengers BC. It's kind of like prehistoric Avengers in a way, whereas like Odin, a very young Odin, and leading these BC Avengers with like the first Herald of the Phoenix Force, and the first Iron Fist, the first Ghost Rider, and like the first Hulk, but it using like a different kind of power set to give him Hulk powers. But then there's also the first Black Panther, and this is like a Black Panther that's like has a panther skin draped over him and utilizing certain vibranium claws and other stuff. This is like early stuff before like they started advancing the technology and what have you. I'm I'm interested. I mean, like every so often they do something interesting with the because they don't like have like a steady run with them, but it's like every so often as I read something about like the Avengers BC, uh, I'm really want like separate issues of like each one of these origins because I'm so curious about the very first Iron Fist and the very first Black Panther, like and also the first Sorcerer Supreme, like the Agamotto, the one who created the eye that's always around Doctor Strange's neck. He's on the team as well. The very first Sorcerer Supreme. I'm really am curious about like, okay, like how did it get here to be like the first Sorcerer Supreme, the first Black Panther, the first Iron Fist? I'm more so those three I'm more curious about than the others because I already know a fair bit about Odin and like kind of the Phoenix. I think they showed us like about like the origin of like the Hulk BC version, but it's not as I'm not really that interested like that on that level as like the others. It's like the Hulk and like Odin's the ones that I care the least, but the others I'm really deeply curious about because I always want to know what was the Avengers of the first Black Panther. How did he start up building Wakanda? And like what was the first like technological marvel, like because like what kind of technology is like literally like a few decades advanced than any current technology around the world. Like during like prehistoric times, did they have like technology of the medieval knights or like during like the pirate age? Is that kind of like that advanced at that time? And then as like as the rest of the world moves up into that space, did they at that time have technology of the 80s compared to what they had, compared to like what the golden ages of piracy around the world did? Like what kind of technology was like nearly to the point of the 70s and 80s technology? It's like, it's like, that level of advance in technology is like, they're so ahead, and it takes everybody else a while to eventually catch up to that point. But anyway, it goes through the story about how like the 5 tribes wanted to like build Wakanda together with the first Black Panther who ate the heart-shaped herb thanks to like the he was like a shaman, and like with the Panther god Bass who came to him in a vision, showed him the heart-shaped herb. He became the first Black Panther. All the tribes around the area, flourished around him as the leader, except for the gorilla tribe, who became like self, like not outsiders, but it's like they're still in Wakanda, but it's like they don't work in like the court with the other tribes. They decided to like leave to govern themselves in a different part of Wakanda. So this is like 1992 where a young T'Chaka comes to Oakland, California to drop in on his brother Njobu, who is supposed to be an undercover spy for Wakanda in America. But apparently he became like a radical. And as he tells his brother that, there was like a bombing in Wakanda and like the person responsible was Ulysses Claw. At the time, it's kind of like a younger Ulysses. But, and he stole some vibranium, which normally it shouldn't even be possible unless he had inside help. And, Njobu's supposed to be an American partner turns out to be another undercover Wakandan supposed to be watching him and pretty much busted him, saying like, yeah, he stole, he was essentially helped Claw because he wanted some of what kind of technology, because he became radicalized because after the atrocities he's seen from people in, like living in America in like the it's possibly been a few years, so it's like late '80s into the '90s. He's seeing like all these atrocities, and he even mentions like, because like I just recently posted like my Killmonger comic book review, and I mentioned that how like growing up in outside of Wakanda, in like especially some place like America, where you see like, read about and you see all these atrocities, inflicted upon black people around the world, was like, they assassinate their leaders, akin like they pretty much like, in certain terms, mentioning Martin Luther King, and always like, like they're over policed, they're overly incarcerated, drugs are like, filling their neighborhoods and disrupting families and all this stuff, and like Wakanda can easily help them fight back their oppressors and take over. And like T'Chaka wasn't having none of that. He doesn't believe being like a warmongers, but he also wants to keep like tradition, and like Wakanda has to remain a secret because we don't want these other places to treat Wakanda like they did other areas of the world by pillaging them and run that risk happening to them. So that's a no. Then of course it's a cut, but I'll get to what happened. Well, I can just say right now, yeah, it shows later that after Zuri outed him, Mjobu pulls out a gun and tries to kill Zuri, but this forces T'Chaka his hand and ends up forcing him killing his own brother to save Zuri's life, leaving like Eric behind, who's just a little kid at the time. Runs in, eventually sees his dead father, while T'Chaka and Zuri goes back to Wakanda. It's essentially just leaving a kid there. It's probably like the one dumb move out of the entire. I mean, you can know why given the story narrative, but it's like, what harm could it be to not just have like Zuri, because I know you want to remain incognito, so you can just have Zuri go down, get the boy, bring him back, so they can all take him back to Wakanda instead of leaving that boy behind to fend for himself, essentially, because that boy became extremely radicalized. Well, either probably already radicalized thanks to his father's probably schooling him about like what's going on and everything like that in the neighborhood, and especially the boy being old enough to see. Growing up in Oakland, it seemed like probably, as he mentions later on, people die every day. It's just, it's just our world kind of situation. So it became kind of like numb to it, which is sad. But it could have helped to just bring that boy along just to avoid him like growing up like the way he did, where he's like going through like eventually having to go to school, care for himself, probably had to go to a foster home more than likely. That probably wasn't fun. Then eventually we went to like the Army and Navy SEALs and Black Ops and then got the moniker Killmonger. But then you, of course, like, fast forward when you, during the ritual challenge, M'Baku challenge from the gorilla tribe challenges T'Challa, who eventually like beats M'Baku but spares his life, because ritual combat, either the opponent yields or they killed, and either way that shows who should be sitting on the throne. So M'Baku yields, and T'Challa earned his right to keep like the moniker and the mantle of Black Panther and lead Wakanda. So the first order of business was going after Ulysses Claw, who many years ago started this whole situation with being the first and only person to actually break through like the borders of Wakanda and steal from them. So they have to, and then lots of Wakandans died during that day. So it was imperative to stop Claw, especially from the leader of the border tribe, uh, 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 Ukabi, who pretty much like had his parents. His parents was killed in that explosion, so he was like having a complete vendetta against Claw, and he thought, oh well, since my best friend is leader now, I definitely can expect some results now from him rather than his father, because Ulysses Claw has been escaping their capture for a long time. So, and there was like a blip of him showing up on their radar. During this time, you see like this awesome moment with Michael B. Jordan, like just killed it in this role. It was one of my favorite roles he was in. I think a lot of people's favorite roles was him as Killmonger. That's why in the comics they have Killmonger look exactly like Michael B. Jordan, just like Nick Fury has to look exactly like Nick Fury. Nick Fury has to look exactly like Sam Jackson. He's at this London museum or British museum looking at these African sculptures. And I remember this, I don't know if it was like Insider or GQ, where this historian was looking over these, scenes from about like, talking about like these artifacts and stuff like that. And like Indiana Jones or even like Black Panther, where like you see the scene where like Killmonger is going over like talking to this supposed expert from this museum, talking about where all these different African masks and artifacts are from, and the guy watching this clip mentions how like there's a lot of museums, especially from the British museums, who had like all these like archaeologists and and treasure hunters, or I don't know the treasure hunters, but it's like definitely archaeologists and other treasure seekers, I should say, or hunters, or whatever how you call them, go to all these different places around the world, like Africa, especially India, Mesopotamia, South America, and all these different areas, Egypt, especially, like all these different areas of the world, pillage, going through all these dig sites that especially they didn't go through proper channels, first and foremost, more than likely. Second of all, not only excavated some of these artifacts, but instead of returning them to the people of that area, because obviously during like prior to, I don't know, let's say prior to the 80s, I'm being generous here, let's say prior to that, not many people was, let's just say prior to like the 90s, not many people were very culturally sensitive, understanding that, because it's only a decade or two when certain museums around the world who have all these artifacts from different countries are being returned back to their respective countries of origin, because the original person who took them had no right to take them and take them back to an unknown land to be put on display and earn money from that. And his point of view, they doing a whole lot better in making sure that if such excavation is needed, gotta go through proper channels, and wherever they find it, to make sure they're returned to the people of their country to have and put on display in their museums, because they know how to honor and treat them with the respect that they deserve. And it's like, I see this clip, and it's like awesome clip where as she mentions about this axe, and she mentions about like some tribe that is the Bendu or Bendi, Ben something tribe, and Eric mentions how like, you know, it was retrieved from their area, but it was originally from Wakanda. She doesn't know what Wakanda is, and it's like, it's like, I'll take it off your hands. This is not for sale. Like, how do you think your ancestors got these? Do you think they give a fair price? And it's like I love this. Like, he's just like really like, I mean, like unfairly giving her the business, but it's like, it's kind of right. It's like her ancestors, more than likely, it's probably not like, who knows? We don't know exactly, whose ancestors did what exactly of a particular time period, but more than likely, it's fair to say this probably is the case. 9 times out of 10, it probably is a fair to say. But he, somehow got her. Well, not somehow. He has an inside girl, this supposed girlfriend who's been working like as a clerk there selling coffee inside the museum, and she ended up poisoning this curator's drink, and Claw and another henchman come in, pretend to be EMTs, assassinate the security there, and takes the vibranium axe, and then of course Eric takes this tribal mask to become like a signature thing in the comics. That's how they get the blip on the radar, and of course Claw is supposed to be selling it to the highest bidder, which turns out to be an American buyer. Turns out to be Martin Freeman's character, who's reprised his role as the CIA director of what's his name? Ross. It's funny how it's like two Rosses. It's not related, but it's funny how it's two Rosses in Marvel. There's General Ross, who always in the past hunted down like the Hulk, but you got Everett Ross, who's in the past in the comics was always played as like a jokey character who every once in a while helped Black Panther and stuff. But since the movie, in the comics they've been treating Everett a little bit more respect, just like akin to Martin Freeman's portrayal is more competent CIA director. So they go to this casino in what was this in Busan, and South Korea, and and that's when they T'Challa meet up with Ross again, because they met before in during the events of Civil War. T'Challa's saying like, warning him like, you can't get in my way. Claw's coming with us in our custody, and of course, Ross, is going after him. He wants him in his custody. So it's not like a pissing contest, because obviously T'Challa's winning that match, but it's just like they both want Claw in their custody, because he obviously is an arms dealer. As Claw comes in trying to sell the bladed axe that is vibranium to Ross, and is trying to like it's kind of like a sting operation, and it went tits up real fast as Okoye got made, and so a fight ensues, an awesome fight, and it leads to a car chase. And I forgot to mention about how like this whole James Bond Q moment where of course you get the classic line from Shuri, "What are those?" And you see like him wearing these sandals. It's supposed to be like kind of like his first day as like king. He gotta like show off to the elders and everything like that, because they gonna like the traditional stuff. So uh, she showed off the new Black Panther suit that he'd be utilizing for the rest of the film, and not the Civil War version. Uh, uh, and she calls these new footwear who is supposed to mask your footsteps. It's completely silent, and she says like, you know what I call them? Sneakers. And I get a chuckle every time she says like, God damn it, that's like a good pun. So they go on this car chase, and they finally stop Claw, and T'Challa is nearly about to kill him. Then I mentioned this before in like a different video, but it's like, why did they have Andy Serkis use the word savages? Like you savages don't deserve them. And it's like, God, I was like, I like Andy Serkis, but I do not like the fact that they had to make him just sound so fucking racist. At least maybe in this moment. Well, no, two moments. But they got him in custody, and Ross interrogates him, and of course, Claw just spilling the beans about like, Wakanda's, completely front. The whole third world country thing is a front. They are extremely technologically advanced than the rest of the world. My arm cannon ain't nothing compared to what they have. That's when Eric busts Claw out, and as like a gunfight, rings out. Ross takes a bullet for Nakia, which nearly cripples him. And of course, like T'Challa get a glimpse at like one of the assailants who wearing a similar ring as him, was made out of vibranium. There's no way anybody else would have a ring like that, because there's only two of us made by his grandfather, and one went to his father, and the other went to his brother. So and he knows nobody haven't seen the brother in a while, soon dead. So it's like he wants to know what's up. So they bring Ross back to Wakanda to be healed, because they're the only ones who have like the technology to heal his back without killing him or paralyzing him. In the meantime, T'Challa goes to Zuri, now a grown-up Zuri, which is pretty much what's his doggone name? Can't believe it. Like doggone it, I forgot like Zuri's name. Oh, there, Forrest Whitaker. I don't know why I'm blanking on Forrest Whitaker's name. And he's telling him, like, I'm your king now. Tell me what happened, and why does this guy have a similar ring as me? So he tells him the story about like how like his father had to kill his own brother to save Zuri's life. And then Ross tells Shuri about how like who Eric Stephen is, because he just shows up one day with a dead body of Claw, because like he had like a shootout with Claw, because he's trying to, like, as Ross put it, he like knows how to get inside. He was trained to infiltrate a nation and like pretty much take it over by taking down the political leader and taking over the any forces that leader has, and that's what he's trying to do. And so he using, knowing that bringing a dead body to Wakanda will be his way in. And of course, Wakabi sees this and is like, this is the only person that actually got the job done, is Outsider. And of course, he ends up siding with Killmonger at the end of the day. But he brings him to the court, and everybody finds out about him being the son of Njobu, and he challenges T'Challa to the right to the throne because that's his birthright. Unlike everybody else, there's supposed to be two bloodlines directly to the throne. Well, three because Shuri, but with this guy here, he has the right, but T'Challa didn't really have to agree to it. But I guess out of kind of like pride or like, because he's in a trash in the name of his father, calling it like, you're a son of a murderer. And just not to sully the name, and because he T'Challa looks upon his father as like just the cast pajamas, pardon the pun, without seeing him just as a man, which he had to find out kind of the hard way later. The fact that his father made choices that was, not just tough, but it's kind of like wrong, but he just saw it as right at the time. And T'Challa just don't see it that way. But Eric got a chance to challenge T'Challa. He beats T'Challa, kills Zuri, and tosses T'Challa's body over the cliffs, presuming him to be dead. So he takes the heart-shaped herb, and like I like this moment because like when you take the heart-shaped herb and you get buried, you get to meet your ancestors on the ancestral plane, and you see a couple times happen to T'Challa, and in Eric's mind, he's back at his childhood apartment home, and he sees his father, and it's like a nice little moment between, a nice little exchange between like, Sterling King Brown and Michael B. Jordan. It's like awesome acting from these two actors, and it's like no tears for me. It's like people die every day. It just it's what happens, and it's like you can see from Njobu's eyes that he's kind of like he feels like he fell as a father. It's like nice little parallel between Njobu and T'Chaka. The fact that they both feel like it's already too late for them, but they at this point they both feel like they failed their children, both in different ways. And like Njobu sees that his son is like what he's become, and it's kind of like you see like because in both of them are responsible for making this massive enemy for Wakanda, because they, despite their differences, as I mentioned in my Killmonger comic book review, it's like T'Challa and Killmonger was like just like Professor X and Magneto, they like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. As far as like they both love Wakanda, but Njobu was kind of radicalized, and he kind of taught, kind of like sprinkled that into his own son, and now he's seeing his son. It's like he became hardened and angry. Not only the fact that he's just like at the end of the day, just like angry kid who lost his father he loved so much, just like T'Challa loves his father so much, but it's like, I don't think Eric ever sees any fault on his father's part, and what he was doing was wrong. The fact that he was trying to turn black people into oppressors, and he just, in a way, he wanted a fair fight. In a way, it was like, he doesn't want our people to suffer. He just wanted to give them like a fighting chance. But Eric seems like he just wanted to go full on takeover, like, just become the oppressors. And it's just like I could tell, like, to me personally, I think like in his eyes he sees like that in his son, and it's like he taking what, it's like, maybe this is me because I'm not sure how far his father would have wanted to take it, but he sees how son is right now, and he feels like the sense of dread that his son has become like a just not like a monster, you know. I don't think he ever sees his son as a monster, but he sees like his son's going on like a very dark path, and there's nothing he can do about it at this point. Uh, uh, then it's like T'Chaka sees like because we'll get to that, but Eric orders the rest of the hardship herbs to be burned to the ground, but like Nakia manages to steal one. They go to the gorilla, try to talk to M'Baku, hoping that he's the only one they feel they can trust to like take on Eric before he pretty much turns Wakanda into something horrific. He showed him that he saved T'Challa because he washed up on their shores. He didn't die, but he's nearly at death. He's pretty much in a comatose state. They gave him the hardship herb, and like I love M'Baku because like this is like a funny clip where it's like a video I seen where it's like after like Black Panther, there's like it's like a video called like white people in at jobs after Black Panther, and it's like just it's like one is this employee, this white guy, he's trying to turn up the thermostat because it was cold in the office, and like a black guy slapped his hand away like, I never freeze. And it's like he's go to this like the break room trying to get a coffee, and it's like this black guy's like, don't touch me, colonizer. And it's like, and then he's trying to voice his like opinion for this like a pitch meeting, and like, and he does like M'Baku things like ho 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 ho, and it's like he's the only white guy in a room full of black people, and they kind of like can scare him off. And then as they turn around, it's like, actually the idea is kind of this is kind of brilliant, and it's just like funny. It's like like it's this like poor white guy. That's kind of like just effing with him. It's always funny to F with white people. But M'Baku's just giving like Ross shit. It's like, I will feed you to my children. Just kidding. We're vegetarians. I was like, M'Baku's hilarious in this. But they save T'Challa. He has a dream, and I love the scene where he just seen all his father and his ancestors on the plains, like all of you are wrong to turn your back on the rest of the world. And it's like, I know people joke about how Black Panther is pretty much like the Lion King, but it's like I can see it, but it's like, it's just like not that at all. But it's like I love where he's just telling all his ancestors how like, you may be my elders, but all of you are just so just ass backwards, knowing full well that our people may not be Wakandans, but there are people who were unfortunate enough to be enslaved and like trafficked, put in awful conditions, killed, mutilated, whipped, and like to this day are living in like bad conditions, or even like and then like you can't, of course I'm just like expounding on that, but if you're not black, you probably would not get it to a certain extent. It's like all these like atrocities that happen to black people kind of easily have stepped in a long time ago, but you chose to turn your back on the rest of the world. And it's like you chose to like just hide and just wall off wherever people that managed to be fortunate enough to be in Wakanda. And it's just like, no more of that, and like, because of what you did, Father, now we got a monster sitting on the throne that's going to pretty much burn Wakanda to the ground if he has to, because, not only he's a radicalized kind of black person, he's like a hurt kid who lost his father because of you. So now I have to deal with that. So he goes back to the earthly plane, and he beseeches M'Baku to help out with trying to take back Wakanda. He says no, but of course he ends up coming back in a Deus Ex Machina thing. And it's like, why you go through the whole rigmarole? It's like, I won't help you, but then you show up and help. So there's this battle between like infighting between the Wakandans, pretty much like everybody else against the Border Tribe and Killmonger. So then it's down to the fight between T'Challa and Killmonger. And I know like that moment when he fall over into the vibranium mine, people always made this comment how they did not like how that CGI looked. It looked like two toys fighting kind of thing. And it's like, I personally never was bothered by that. And it's like, if you use CGI in anything, it's like you gotta let certain things slide. The movie was doing so fantastic, and it's like, if one CGI is like off to you, I think you can let it slide, considering how everything else was being used to full effectiveness. I mean, but personally, I never found it like bothersome at all. I can see their point, but I was never bothered by it. But those two duke it out, and T'Challa, in an awesome move, as Eric, commented, is like one hell of a move. He kills or mortally wounds Killmonger, and as like a one solace that he could offer Eric, because he mentions about how like his father always told him about how the way the sun sets on Wakanda is the most beautiful thing in the world, and so like he takes him to above ground to see the sunset, so he can at least have that. And like he offers Eric, he could probably still save him, and it's like, nah. It's like one of the best lines out of the MCU, probably in movies in general, one of the greatest lines. It's like, why? So you can just lock me up? Nah, just bury me in the ocean like my ancestors, because they knew death was better than bondage. And like, I know I mentioned many times how like Tom Holland, is probably the only actor that made me cry in the theater, but Michael B. Jordan in this particular role, in this particular line, got me pretty close, because I choked up the first time I heard that line. That was like a brilliant line. And it's like, that rang so true to a lot of black people. So he takes up the blade and bleeds out and dies. If I had like an issue, I wish they did not kill, because like Killmonger is like, so a good handful of good MCU villains. And it's like, some of them, and it's like a good portion of them died off. And it's like, you really should not kill off like the good villains. It's like Vulture, Purple Man, Killmonger, Kingpin, Bushmaster, Thanos, Loki, as like good examples of great. I even like, I've got to put there like Ironmonger with what's his name? Crap. What's his name? Jeff Bridges. I knew it started with a J. With Jeff Bridges. It's like, he was a pretty good villain there too. But it's like, and they don't keep like their good villains. But maybe they'll do some kind of workaround with like the multiverse that's going on right now and what have you. But and it's always been like word that they want to bring back Michael B. Jordan as the next Black Panther, because he's still young enough and he can do this. He knows material and he can play this for X amount of years. And it's like, personally, I don't think that's a good idea, because he already had like a role. He already did great as Killmonger. He is Killmonger, and it's like, if you bring him back in like a multiversal thing, he should play Killmonger again. But it's like, you gotta go with a different actor for Black Panther, because the average moviegoer, you don't want to confuse them by bringing back uh the guy who played as a villain before as the hero now. And it's like, it's too much. And I know, this year they're supposed to, later on in the summer, or no, not summer, November, Black Panther 2 was to be coming out. And they probably gonna have to replace Letitia Wright as Shuri, because recently she's been like getting in it with the people about like mandatory vaccinations and what have you, and she wasn't having it. So she already had like got like some kind of injury during filming, and then on top of that, now he's got to deal with like the mandates with like vaccinations and stuff like that, and she doesn't want to take it, so she had to stay in London, where she is from. So she has to like stay in the country, and so because the filming's in America, she can't, come back until she gets vaccinated for safety reasons. And the funny thing is, she's playing like a scientist in the film, and she doesn't believe the science of the vaccinations or the vaccines or whatever. And so now you got to replace two people, Black Panther and Shuri. And I really wish they could use, because I personally would think like Michael J. White would have make a great Black Panther, because he's still pretty damn young, and he knows martial arts and everything like that, and like he would make a hell of a Black Panther. But I guess you want to go with somebody who can do this for a good 10 years, and I don't know. I think you can swing it with Michael J. White, honestly, personally. But the movie ends with like another great thing, where it's like, Black Panther taking the, certain ideas from Killmonger and utilizing to better Black people in America and around the world, and open up his borders. So, and he's talking with the UN as well as like open up their borders and showing Wakanda what it could be and what it can offer to the world. And it's like, it's so good, such a good idea. And it's like, that's the way to end it. It's like, because he's not, because Killmonger wasn't totally wrong, and just the way he went about doing it was wrong. And so he decided to like break tradition, and just enough where it's like, they're not going to hide in secret anymore. You want to be out and proud, and like showing the world that Wakanda can utilize their resources to as much as they can to help better the world as much as they can, by building like outreach programs and science programs to inner city kids to help better their lives, so they won't have to live in like the conditions that they're in. And I know there's certain real life Black people who are doing that, but it's just like, God, it's just like, I really wish like something like that was like more of it. But yeah, but that was Black Panther, one of like the greatest Marvel movies period. And it's like, to this day, it's like, I just think it's just a dominating force of a movie, man. But who hasn't watched Black Panther? But if you haven't, I do wish you check it out. And of course, if you have already seen it, tell me what you think. Does it still hold up to you? Like, that isn't even a question if it still holds up. But please let me know what your thoughts are of Black Panther. And I will see you guys with another movie review. And don't know when, at some point next month, I want to start my Star Wars movie and TV show reviews leading up to May the 4th. Because then I'm going to start like doing reviews for like Obi-Wan series, which will be happening by May 25th, I think. So there's gonna be a lot of Star Wars stuff coming down the pipeline. So I think I want to do my finish up my TV show review for uh, Duel Masters, but I haven't really made that much of a dent in it yet because been doing a lot of these Black History Month kind of reviews, so they kind of taking up a lot of my time. So now I can just like focus on that and at least get the first season out of Duel Masters and do a review of that and start doing that post, and then I start working on like the Star Wars stuff. So anyway, I will see you guys next time. Have a great night. Happy Black History Month, and Wakanda forever.